And I think the hardest bit is looking at the conditions that led to the event. I think people are quite good at spotting what's happened. And the debriefs normally are framed as, what did we do well and what do we need to change?
Yeah.
What they don't, because we can observe those, that's quite easy.
Yeah.
What's more difficult, and it's something that I really sort of teach in the classes, is, what went well and why? Okay, what were the specific actions, conditions, behaviors that led us to have a successful outcome? So then once we've identified those, we can replicate them. And if something didn't go wrong, didn't go well, so it went wrong, and framing it in a positive bit, what can we improve and how are we going to do it? So again, we look at the specific bits of what steps are required to make the improvement, not, oh yeah, well, we need to communicate more clearly. Okay, that's great, but what was the breakdown and what stopped the clear communication from happening? And it's hard because you've got to get people to think about these things. And it's quite amusing in the classes where I teach. And, we have a set framework for running a debrief. And I get people to write down the answers to the debrief before we go through it. And I warn them and say, if you come up with a single word answer in terms of what's happening, then actually I'm going to dig deeper. I'm going to ask you lots of questions. So if you just say, oh yeah, the teamwork was good. All right, give me a specific example of where teamwork worked. I don't know. Well, in that case, how do you get better? So when you've built up trust and psychological safety in your team, like you've got within your first, your first tier of network, then it's much easier to share those stories. And there is less shame involved when something goes wrong, because we like to pride ourselves on the work that we do, the diving we do, that all of the time and money we've invested in that. We don't want to say, I'm a dunce, I made a mistake. But if we can get around that and say, actually, everybody makes mistakes, then actually it's easier to have those conversations.
How much of an issue is this in your experience of people don't want to look stupid in front of others and don't want to admit things they don't want to talk about? Huge, right? I mean, it has to be huge.
Oh, massive. Okay, yeah. And the more senior you are in the industry, the harder it is. And I used to work for a consultancy called Paradigm, and their founder, a lady called Teresa Swinton, had a great phrase, which was, be aware of the shadow you cast. So when you're in a leadership position, your shadow will influence people below you. And the further you are up the organization, the longer that shadow is cast, and you're going to impact more people. And so as a consequence, if you have people at the very tops of the organizations who put their hands up and say, I am human, I make mistakes, and here is an example of it, the effects are massive, because people sit and go, wow, I held this person on a pedestal of excellence, and they're human too. They make mistakes. Let me tell you a story.
Yeah, I think it is really one of those things where, I kind of like, I go back to when in terms of diving, I'm not one of the greats, but I've done.
You are in somebody's eyes.
Yeah, in somebody's eyes. So, and it's very difficult. And I always look back at it and go, not many people critique me anymore, in my diving skills, in my knowledge, in my teaching. And that's why I kind of like end up going the more GUE route, let's say, because that didn't put me at the top. That put me actually at the bottom, and starting at the bottom of instruction with GUE, as well as everybody else, and working my way up. And that put me with people that actually I respected and could say, not that I didn't respect other people in other agencies, but I respected these people, and they actually analyzed what I was doing. And I found in myself that I wasn't perfect. Of course, I knew I wasn't perfect, but at the same time, it was really encouraging to hear other people say to me, actually, Andrew, you could do that better. That way you did there, and be specific, like you said, give me actual specific examples of where I could improve in my diving and what I was doing. And I really actually quite enjoy that side of it, because otherwise complacency sets in, right? And we all just go, well, aren't I great? I'm brilliant. I'm an instructor trainer and I'm an instructor examiner, whatever. I've done all these dives, and aren't I brilliant? And I find that in diving, well, in a lot of adventure sports, right, this is what leads to the accidents that happen and unfortunate, people not making it back, because they believe, and there's stories over and over, and we're not going to get into those individual stories, but there's stories all over that we read about tragedies that happen, and it does stem from human factors, the whole ego, if you like, about diving. And
but it requires also people to accept criticism, right? I mean, that's the other thing.
Yes.
I mean, how many people, and the higher up the ladder you are in diving, and a lot of people are, I wouldn't exclude myself, trying to be proud of what you achieved, and being more the alpha male type guy. You don't want to hear somebody below you telling you what went wrong, right? You know what I mean?
Totally.
And that's something I think everybody has to overcome, saying, okay, you know what, even a student, as Andrew said, we don't do everything right, but it's something you need to, sometimes, adjust and listen, right?